is a masterpiece. A gold world of Frank Herbert, brought to life in front of our very eyes. The intricate costumes and sets, the top-notch acting, the dynamic soundtrack, and of course, the mesmerizing cinematography. Beauty beyond imagination. And yet, something doesn't feel right. Usually, when I finish films or series of books of higher artistic merit, I'm left with a rush of intense emotions. But as I left the cinema after watching Dune, I felt indifferent. Now, this wasn't only me. Other critics have pointed this out too. Of course, I'm not really a huge fan of critics, but the point still stands. I remember when I was talking about Dune with fellow film enthusiasts, we all lightly commented that the film was great, and then we just continued on our original conversation. It didn't stick in our conversation, or in our minds either. The film only re-entered my mind when I was watching the director's cut of Kingdom of Heaven, another film about a hero who leaves his green homeland for a desert world of conflict and war. It was then I started to seriously think about Dune. What was its shortcomings? Was it the acting, the screenplay, which was a little bit clunky, the pacing, the structure? No, there really wasn't anything I could pinpoint. Everything looked and sounded and felt pretty good. Some parts were even perfect. But then it hit me.
Round 12.
In combat sports, there's a saying, styles make fights. In my opinion, that applies to film as well. In broadest of terms, style is composed of features and directorial choices that are repeatedly used in an auteur's catalog to separate himself from other directors. It's what makes Tarantino, Tarantino, and Hitchcock, Hitchcock. And it's what makes Villeneuve, Villeneuve. Right off the bat, I want to specifically point out the fact that I am a massive Denis Villeneuve fan. Now, there are layers of devices and directorial choices that substantiate style, but I'm not going to get too deep into that. Simply put, Villeneuve has a specific style where his films are slow, deliberate, filled with long shots. He likes using a certain grayish palette, and his films are mainly driven by external and internal action, rather than dialogue. Overall, his style creates an effect of, I guess the closest word would be a sense of emptiness, which is a word often used to describe Villeneuve's films. A few critics even labeled Villeneuve's style as soulless, which I actually agree. Emptiness and soullessness is not inherently a bad thing. In fact, it works extremely well in a lot of Villeneuve's films, namely in Sicario and Blade Runner 2049. I think the aforementioned films excel because the style corresponds and works with the themes and subtext of the story. Sicario presents a corrupted world where there are no true heroes. Its themes revolve around the dehumanization of war. Therefore, Villeneuve's style of indifference and emptiness is extremely useful, as the audience can personally experience the desensitizing nature of war. Blade Runner 2049, which is one of my favorite films of all time, explores an important question of what it means to be human. And like YouTuber The Closer Look suggests, what happens when humans lose their humanity? Villeneuve's style again fits perfectly, where the overall sense of emptiness and hollowness create a convincing world where human meaning and soul is eroded, where the line between what is man and what is not becomes increasingly blurred. In Dune, though not as prevalent as the two aforementioned film, Villeneuve's style remains. The film still has that grayish palette, the slow pacing. The film still has that empty feeling, for lack of a better word. However, Villeneuve's style simply does not match the story. While people can have varying interpretations of a story, Dune's story mostly centers thematically on the ideas of power, religion, and fate. It is a coming-of-age story of the grandest proportion. Therefore, I think Villeneuve's style does not fit well. Moreover, I think it is detrimental to character building. The soullessness of Villeneuve's style creates a mental gap between the characters and us, the audience, where it makes it really hard to fall in love and empathize with the characters not named Paul. I think the biggest signifier of this is the divide between people who have read Dune and people who have not. Of course, it is common sense and redundant to point out the fact that people who have read the source material would be more inclined to love and appreciate the new product. But I think the divide is greater, especially for Dune. People who have read Dune have overwhelming high praise and adoration of Villeneuve's adaptation, and I think that this is because the readers of Dune have already developed a bond between the characters and themselves before stepping foot into the cinema. But for people who haven't read Dune, it becomes extremely hard to care for characters, especially the side characters like Duncan and Gurney and Leto. Like when the Atreides were attacked, I really didn't feel sad. When Leto and Duncan died, I was kind of indifferent. And I know you're supposed to feel for them, because in the books, the attack and the deaths does affect Paul. But because of Villeneuve's style, I think it creates a world where you become desensitized, which again is perfectly fine depending on context. But in Dune, I think it definitely limits the emotional potential the story has. Of course, overall, I still really like the film, and I think it's definitely in my top movies to come out of 2021. I'm looking forward to part 2, where Villeneuve can hopefully produce something even greater, something that is not only beautiful and entertaining, but emotionally impactful, a film that has something to say, much like Sicario and Blade Runner 2049. So yeah, again, this is only my opinion. Let me know in the comment section below whether you agree or not, and what you felt about Dune. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe. See ya!